Imagine this. Marcus was only 13. He stood in the cold marble atrium of a Roman villa in the year 96 AD. The morning sun poured through the open roof, casting sharp patterns on the floor. He wore a plain white tunic, his dark hair carefully oiled by the slaves of the household. But something was wrong today. The servants moved with strange urgency. Their faces were pale, their eyes averted. From the kitchen came the heavy scent of roasted meat, honeyed wine, and expensive spices. Too grand for an ordinary meal. Marcus didn't know that 3 days ago, his name had been written on papyrus and placed in a silver bowl. He didn't know the visitors arriving today weren't here for dinner or politics. They were buyers. He touched the tiny wooden horse hidden in his belt. His father had carved it before selling him to pay debts. Marcus kept it secret for 2 years. Tonight, it would be burned before his eyes. By dawn tomorrow, he would learn why older slaves whispered that some fates were worse than dying. This was the reality for thousands of boys across the Roman Empire. They were not victims of random cruelty, they were victims of a system. A machine that operated silently for centuries. Rome was beautiful on the surface. It ruled 60 million people over 5 million square kilometers. It built marble temples and roads that lasted millennia. But behind its glory was a hidden world of suffering. Historians estimate over 800,000 boys were taken as male concubines during the empire's height. They were used, displayed, and discarded like objects. And it wasn't even secret. Wealthy Romans openly competed to own the most beautiful boys. They showed them off at dinner parties like rare art pieces. The best boys, usually from Greece or Egypt, sold for more than a villa. Human life reduced to a price tag. Slave markets specialized in this trade. In Rome's central market, boys stood naked on raised platforms. Buyers examined their teeth, checked their muscles, even tested their reflexes. Sellers kept detailed records, where each boy came from, his age, his skills, like they were livestock. Even families contributed. Starving parents sold sons for quick money, convincing themselves it was for their future. Pirates captured boys, knowing they fetched high prices. Merchants scouted remote villages for promising children and shipped them to Rome like cargo. And once sold, the law offered no mercy. Ordinary slaves had a few legal protections. Male concubines had none. They couldn't complain. They couldn't seek help. They couldn't even form friendships. They stopped being people. They became property. Rome even had schools designed to train obedience. Special academies across the empire studied how to break boys while keeping them attractive. They learned how to destroy a child's will without leaving scars. It was psychological warfare masked as education. And the trade was massive. Boys came from everywhere: Britain, Egypt, Gaul, Greece. Each region had special qualities. Celtic boys were valued for pale skin and fiery spirits. Breaking them was considered more satisfying. Greek boys were prized for their beauty and intelligence, fetching the highest prices. Germanic boys were admired for strength and exotic looks. Ships full of chained boys crossed the Mediterranean. Caravans dragged them over mountains. Many died on the way. Their deaths were just expected losses, part of the profit calculation. And society didn't even care. Roman poets wrote verses praising beautiful boys. Philosophers debated proper training methods. Historians casually recorded the sexual tastes of emperors and generals. The boys were invisible. Even worse, some enforcers were former concubines. Surviving boys were given small scraps of power. They became trainers, overseers, even punishers of new arrivals. Survival twisted them into instruments of the same cruelty that destroyed them. Archaeology proves it. Roman villas have been found with hidden rooms for boys, rooms with locks, chains, and punishment tools. Medical instruments from these sites show surgeries were performed to alter their bodies for pleasure, without anesthesia or care. Now imagine Marcus. He didn't know this yet. He was just a scared boy clutching a wooden toy, wondering why his master, Gaius Aurelius, was walking toward him. For 2 years, Gaius had barely looked at him. Orders always came through the steward. But today, Gaius circled Marcus like a merchant inspecting an animal. Marcus stayed still. Eye contact meant defiance. Defiance meant punishment. Gaius lifted Marcus' chin. Checked his teeth. Ran hands through his oiled hair. Pulled back his tunic to inspect his shoulders. Marcus shivered. And just after midday, the buyers arrived. 3 men, their litters draped in silk, stepped into the villa. Their togas gleamed with senatorial stripes. They were welcomed into the grandest reception room, reserved only for the most powerful guests. Marcus peeked through the kitchen doorway. He heard laughter. Smooth, cruel laughter. This wasn't like when his father sold him. That was desperation. This was business. By nightfall, Marcus would no longer belong to Gaius Aurelius. He would belong to something far, far worse. The summons came in the late afternoon. Marcus was ordered to bathe. Slaves scrubbed him, oiled his skin until it shone, and dressed him in his finest tunic, the one reserved for religious festivals. His hair was curled in the Greek style Gaius preferred. When he looked into the polished bronze mirror, he saw a stranger. Not a boy. A display piece. He entered the reception room. The 3 buyers stopped talking. They studied him with the same cold focus they might give to a fine sculpture. One gestured for him to turn around. Another asked him to speak, listening to his voice. They discussed him openly, his height, his posture, his potential uses. Marcus stood motionless as if invisible. They debated how long he might remain useful before needing replacement. The price they agreed on was higher than anything Marcus had heard for a person. But this wasn't just a simple sale. He wasn't being bought by one man. He was being bought by a consortium, 3 wealthy Romans pooling money to share expensive acquisitions. They owned a private facility outside the city. A place designed specifically for systematic exploitation. His value wasn't for one household. He was an investment, calculated for maximum profit. The contract was signed formally, with witnesses and seals. A human life reduced to ink on papyrus. Marcus watched his ownership change hands with the same routine precision used for livestock. And then they moved him immediately. Before he could process anything, he was chained inside a covered wagon with 3 other boys. Their ages ranged from 11 to 15. Their faces mirrored his: confusion, fear, silent despair. During the journey, Marcus whispered to the oldest boy, asking where they were going. "Don't speak," the boy warned. "If the guards hear, we'll all be punished." So they traveled in silence. Each alone with his fear. By nightfall, they arrived. The facility was like nothing Marcus had seen. From the outside, it looked like a palace. Gardens. Fountains. Columns. But around it were high walls topped with iron spikes. It was a fortress of luxury, a trap. Inside, everything was beautiful yet suffocating. Marcus was taken to his new quarters. At first glance, it seemed luxurious. Silk curtains. Soft beds. Even books and instruments. But the windows were barred. The door locked from the outside. Every surface designed to prevent escape or harm. It was a gilded cage. And soon, Marcus learned that luxury was part of the training. Boys treated well became dependent on their captors. They grew grateful for small kindnesses even while being broken. Fine clothes, good food, little gifts, they were tools to twist the mind. Training began gently. Music lessons. Poetry. Conversation practice. Tutors taught Marcus to play the lyre, recite verses, hold witty dialogue. He was told these were skills for advancement, ways to make himself valuable. But he soon understood the truth. These weren't lessons for education. They were lessons for entertainment. And the other boys, they were a terrifying glimpse of the future. The newest arrivals still resisted. Still cried. Still clung to memories of family. Those who had been there longer moved like ghosts, graceful, quiet, eager to please. The oldest boys had earned small privileges, serving wine to trainers, punishing new arrivals. Their eyes were hollow. Physical conditioning was strict. Marcus' meals were controlled to keep him slim. His skin was oiled daily to stay soft. His hair styled to emphasize youth. He was taught to walk slowly, to move his body in ways that pleased observers. But the psychological conditioning was worse. Rules were unclear, constantly shifting. Anxiety became constant. He was isolated from any real friendship. Affection was rewarded only when directed toward trainers. Worst of all, they convinced him his old life was worthless. That this new life was better. Sleep became a weapon. Marcus was woken at random hours for inspections, keeping him exhausted, easy to control. The schedule was always changing, creating endless tension. He never knew when he'd be summoned. Punishment was cruel but precise. Never leaving marks. Boys who disobeyed were locked in tiny closets where they couldn't lie down. Others were forced to stand motionless for hours. Some were left in silent darkness for days. Pain wasn't the goal. Obedience was. Even friendships between boys were destroyed. They were encouraged to spy on each other. To report disobedience for small rewards. Trust became impossible. Marcus watched the Greek boy who arrived just before him slowly lose his defiance. He became soft-spoken, submissive, eager to please. The strong Germanic boy who fought every command at first. He, too, changed. His voice grew quiet. His eyes stayed downcast. They all broke. Marcus was breaking too. The final breaking didn't come with violence. It came with hope. Marcus was told his training was exemplary. He was special. He might be chosen for a unique assignment, one that could lead to freedom. For days, he believed it. He imagined seeing his father again. He imagined escape. But it was a lie. The special assignment was his first full service. His first client was Senator Lucius Cornelius. Lucius was respected for his virtue and family values. In public, he was a moral man. But in private, he visited the facility to indulge in things society pretended not to see. He examined Marcus like property. Like an animal. Like a thing. Marcus had been trained for this moment. He knew how to smile. How to act grateful. How to respond properly. But nothing could prepare him for the reality. Lucius didn't speak to Marcus like a person. He spoke about him, to invisible listeners, commenting on his body, his posture, his performance. The physical pain was one thing. But the psychological pain cut deeper. Marcus realized he was now exactly what they wanted, obedient. Broken. Hollow. After Lucius left, Marcus was cleaned, dressed, and sent back to his room. Ready for the next client. The facility operated like a machine. Appointments were scheduled. Boys were rotated like products. Records were kept on scrolls, tracking availability like an inventory list. Clients came from everywhere, military commanders, merchants, even philosophers who wrote about virtue. Marcus understood he wasn't serving one man. He was serving an entire system. The Roman Empire wasn't just powerful because of armies and roads. It was powerful because it treated human lives as disposable fuel. And Marcus was fuel. Time blurred. Each encounter stripped away another piece of him. Each day confirmed there was no escape. No rescue. Some boys went mad. Some stopped speaking. Some were quietly disposed of when they became useless. Marcus survived by splitting his mind. He learned to detach. To watch what was happening as if it were happening to someone else. But in doing so, he lost the last connection to his own humanity. And even survival had an expiration date. As months passed, Marcus' face and body began to mature. He was becoming less desirable. The trainers spoke of his future. Boys who aged out were sold to cheaper brothels. Some were castrated to prolong their youth. Many died during the surgery. The average lifespan? 4 years. Few lived longer. Marcus knew his time was running out. Marcus fell ill. The disease spread quickly through the facility, claiming boy after boy. But Marcus didn't fear it. He welcomed it. Fever burned away his strength. He hallucinated, dreaming of his father's voice calling across the hills of Gaul. He imagined sunlight, fresh air, freedom. On a cold spring morning, Marcus died quietly in his locked room. His death was written in the ledger, inventory reduced by 1 unit. Replacement required. He was buried in an unmarked grave. The wooden horse his father carved was long gone. And Marcus was forgotten. For 16 centuries. When archaeologists finally excavated the ruins of the facility, they found the ledgers. Thousands of names. Thousands of boys reduced to lines of Latin text. They found skeletal remains showing malnutrition, broken bones, surgical mutilations. They found records of clients, senators, generals, philosophers, even early Christian leaders. They found financial records proving the facility's profits funded temples, roads, even parts of the Pantheon. Rome's beauty was paid for with their suffering. And this was just one facility. There were hundreds like it across the empire. Conservative estimates say over 800,000 boys lived and died in this system over 5 centuries. Marcus was just one. The Roman system didn't die. It went underground. When public opinion shifted, the trade continued in secret. And even today, the same pattern survives. Right now, an estimated 27 million people live in modern slavery. A quarter are children. The techniques are the same. Psychological conditioning. Isolation. False hope. Reward mixed with punishment. Powerful people exploit the vulnerable while society looks away. The same mechanisms that let Roman senators keep a public face of virtue while privately destroying children still exist in modern institutions. Marcus is not just a Roman story. He is every child whose life is stolen for profit. He is every victim hidden behind polite society's walls. His wooden horse, carved by a father's love, burned by guards who saw only an obstacle, represents everything humanity loses when greed outweighs compassion. Marcus is a reminder. A warning. That what happened in Rome can happen anywhere. And it still does.